Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, or the sort of the movement generally. Now, it kind of kicked off big. It was around, but you'd see it in places like colleges and the super lefty areas of the Western world. But it sort of kicked off as something universal in the Western world, at least, when Joe Biden became president and the globalists regained control of the apparatus of government and power, and where Joe Biden, the guy who couldn't even get a sentence out without flubbing it, and who didn't do any campaigning, got 81 million votes, the highest number of votes in presidential history by a country mile, beating Obama by more than 10 million votes. So believe that if you will, but that's when DEI really kicked off, and there's certainly in the pretty much uniformly across the Western world, the United States, Australia, Britain, within a short space of time, we're all trumpeting the same message, which of course was the globalist message, which was also taken up vigorously and aggressively by the big fund managers like BlackRock and so on. I guess it's worth having a look at having a little bit of a review. So it's been over 2 years now. Diversity, equity, inclusion. What has it achieved? What has it produced, and what injustices has it redressed, and what gremlins has it put to bed, and so on. So let's have a look at that. Now, we have to believe there was a problem in the first place, and I never saw any convincing argument that there was a problem in the first place. The argument or the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion was based on, well, the outcomes aren't equal. We don't have as many black lesbians in CEO positions or in senior public servant positions. Therefore, there must be homophobia, transphobia, racism, and misogyny, or all of the evil things. Hitler personally is roaming the length and breadth of all these places, preventing these minorities from getting equal outcomes. And inequity is all what it's all about. So anyway, just sort of having a look at that. Now I'm going to have a look at. I've got a few things together here. There was kind of too much just at all off the top of my head, so I've made a few notes. Here's a senior public servant. Talking about DEI in the public service, and the way that this woman talks, and I'll come back at looking at her CV in a minute, but the way she talks is not so much about hiring black lesbians as preventing straight white Christian men from getting employment. That appears to be, the main purpose of diversity, equity, inclusion. So that seems to be sort of the reverse of what it is. If you want diversity, wouldn't you sort of want to hire more, black lesbians? Wouldn't that be like part of it? And wouldn't you find jobs that they could do? And so if you're really serious about it, you could do something maybe not worthwhile necessarily, but at least you could make a difference. But that doesn't appear to be what they're doing. The replies that she and the assertion she makes is, as long as we're stopping straight white male Christians from getting jobs in the public service, then we have automatically achieved most of what we want. Now that kind of ties in with the globalization project, because the people that are really losing from globalization, the primary group that's losing is straight white Christian males. So the idea that we can just get them all out of the way, take them out back and shoot them and all this sort of stuff, that appears to be what's going on. So equity, as this, and others, by the way, she's not alone here. Equity means that people must be treated differently because of their race, and not because of any sort of meritorious reason. Now, diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't really doing too good at the moment. There appears to be a general view that it's not achieving any of its objectives, but that it's actually a form of evil racism that's greater than any racism that may have gone before, assuming any even existed, or certainly in the scale. So the argument is that the racism that was around is so bad, so evil, Hitler, that whatever we do, no matter how bad it is an improvement on that. That appears to be, again, one of the underlying arguments. Now, many of the sort of diversity, equity, inclusion, what they call as initiatives, are actually illegal, and I'm stunned that there is no legal challenges. As far as I can find, there is not a single government department anywhere across the Western world, even though it is their job. They exist purely to fight back against and to take to court people that break the laws in terms of race and religion and so on, whether it be in hiring practices or discriminatory employment practices and things like that. It's their job to do that, yet not fucking one in the whole Western world is actually, as long as it's straight white Christian males being targeted for discrimination, who cares? But just one black lesbian and the whole machinery clicks into action. That's how insane it all is. But here's one. Here's a woman here, black woman, and again I'll come back to, and she's talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and she believes that hard work, loyalty to your country, a sense of sacrifice, sense of duty, discipline, conscientious behaviour. These are not reasons to base hiring or promotion decisions or performance. These aren't, because these are the words and the behaviour of fucking white supremacists. So if you're you want to work hard and you've got a sense of duty and all these sorts of things, the discipline to do your job and do it well, then you're fucking Hitler. You are fucking Hitler, and you have to go. And other people who don't have any of those views should be put in your place. So this woman's been talking, and she says that anyone can identify as anything they want. So if a white person wants to identify as a black person or vice versa, that's okay. That's diversity. So you can identify as whatever you want, and if somebody isn't sure, then she doesn't know either until they identify themselves. You're dealing with insanity, you would think. Now, when it was, some question was put to her is, surely race shouldn't really have anything to do with it. It should be someone's qualifications or achievements or accomplishments or education or all of the above. No, because that favours white people, because white people work harder, they arrive on time, they're harder working, and so on. And this won't result in diversity and equity and inclusion. So so again, the insanity coming out, but looking at looking at the anyone that questions diversity, equity, inclusion, of course, is Hitler and a fascist and far right and white supremacist it isn't. I'm just looking through some of the points here that I've put together. if you look at the budget some of these people are getting, I'm making a bit of a mess of this, so I'll pick up the pace a bit now. When this, I mean, here's another public servant was, she's complained that there's too many straight white Christian males in the upper management of a particular government department. So it came, the question came back, so what percentage of the upper management or senior managerial positions were held by straight white males when you started just over 2 years ago, and how many are held today? And she stared blankly and said, well, I don't know, I'll have to find out. Now, you'd think somebody whose job it was to do the diversity, equity, inclusion thing, you think they would have gone in straight away, crunched the numbers, crunched the stats, you know, so many percent of straight white males, but now we've changed that. And so now whether or not there weren't many straight white males to begin with, or they've all been taken out back and shot, she doesn't want to stay. But this pretense of, well, I don't know, I just don't buy it. And she's supposed to have come back to the people, but hasn't. They've been flooding the one particular government department with interns that have all been drawn from activist NGOs. And I think that's a terrible thing personally, but anyway, that I think should be jumped on. They've upgraded, gay, lesbian, and so on people, trans people that want to complain about being victimised. That they can, they've got a straight path now. They don't have to go through a formal process. They can kind of just get on the phone and, hey, Billy Bob's an asshole. He didn't use my preferred pronoun, and they can get it turn it straight into a big issue. I don't know if that's a step forward. Another one here, she said they've changed the logo on the documents, and that's an achievement. They said they're now recording more details of people's disabilities, including mental disabilities, and someone can change their sexual orientation by the day, or say that they're a cat or a dog or a horse, and they'll change that every day if they want, and that's considered to be some sort of great step forward in diversity. Now, the idea is that equity has to be achieved for what are generically referred to as underserved communities. You'll find Sadiq Khan in London using things like underserved communities. What does that mean? There isn't any actual definition for it, or none that the diversity people seem to know about. Now, various corporations, I've come across the diversity people in corporations, and they tend to be more fascist and Nazi than Hitler ever could be, the way they behave. And again, they come back to their mission is to ensure that straight white males don't get jobs. That as long as they achieve that in their view, then they've achieved diversity. And people who are unqualified in the jobs won't feel bad about themselves, provided there's no white person around who does know what they're doing. So now they constantly claim there's systemic and entrenched racial discrimination, and that's what that's why diversity, equity, and inclusion is needed. But they come back to not knowing what the discrimination is, not even understanding what systemic is. They've just been told that enough times. They go, "Oh, yeah, systemic. Oh, yeah, systemic." And so they don't have a measuring, any sort of criteria to say, well, here's the problem quantified, and here are the solutions that we've put in place, and this is the extent to which we've achieved a high degree of diversity and equity. There doesn't appear to be any of that, and they don't seem to know. There doesn't appear to be any. So when this one lady was asked, do you have can you quantify the racism? And she makes some vague answer. Well, we've got policies, but we really have to review how they're going. but you've had $100 million and 2.5 years to do it, and you can't even fucking say. Now, when you start breaking down the numbers on some of these expenditures that they have, they've been throwing vast sums of money at activist study groups and NGOs and things like that. So it's really become a conduit, a slush fund for putting out money to activist black groups and NGO race hustlers and so on. No one's doing any fucking work. It's just a slush fund to spray money in all directions. So another question here was, are white men in the majority, and are they there without any form of merit? And her reply was, well, that's common sense. Everybody knows that all the white men are there for no good reason. Okay, all right then. Well, what's your evidence of that? Everybody knows. We don't need to. Now, I come across this constantly. Well, how do you know that there's so many white supremacist, Nazi fascists around? How do you know that? Well, everybody knows, and I don't have to justify it to you. And if you ask that question, that means you're Hitler. So going through this, none of these people have any answer. They can't quantify the so-called racism they're fighting against. They can't quantify what they've achieved in overcoming it. So it's really just in itself an outrageous sort of program of bigotry against white people. That's all it is. I can't see that it's anything else. But again, consistent with the globalist project to crush white people. That's all it is. Now, this is one of the. I'm looking now at the CV of one of the most prominent activists, and now a senior, very well paid, by the way, senior public servant pushing the this diversity, equity, inclusion agenda. She's one of the most senior people in the Western world pushing this. So her father was some black, she's black, was some black legal aid lawyer, and she was an ordinary student. Now, she's an ordinary student, and then during high school, she is suddenly selected. Remember, she's not from a prominent high school. She's from an ordinary government school in a lower middle class area, and an ordinary student. But somehow she gets selected for an exchange student program in Israel. I don't know how that would happen. How would that happen? That seems very strange. If she was an outstanding student or something, you go, okay. So the training program in Israel involves how to fight back against oppression, and would have involved a great deal of radicalization, activism, all sorts of things like that. And that would have been in the mid-70s, around there, early to mid-70s. Now, she actually doesn't. She then moves to effectively another NGO, and as a volunteer. She's not getting paid. So who's paying for all this? Her folks aren't well off enough to pay for this. So somehow she's able to travel around the world. Again, she's now been radicalized in the Israeli school as an exchange student, goes straight into the NGOs as or does a stint getting some bullshit arts degree, then goes to become an activist in an NGO. She doesn't have a job, and she's like 30 or something before she even has a job. And then she immediately, after just a couple of years in the job, she suddenly is declared to be a foreign affairs expert and is working for a guy who is a Jewish activist in the government, and she's then given a very expensive publicly funded training program, and then is moved back to Israel where again she's got a lot of activist connections. So really from middle high school up until 1998, really, she's done nothing but worked for or within Jewish activist groups or for Jewish activists. That seems a bit odd to me. So that's only 20 years of running around with in Jewish activist circles. I don't understand that. Why was she selected for that? This ordinary student. In fact, ordinary. She sounds almost moronic when you listen to her speak. Then she gets promoted to quite a senior public service post, again reporting to a Jewish boss, and then gets an ambassadorship, not to a big, then gets, I can't see she's achieved anything at all ever, then gets hired as diversity, equity, inclusion director for one of the largest government departments in the United States, and has been showered with all sorts of awards by various Jewish groups and so on. So I don't know, there's something on there. What's the Jewish thing? What's that got to do with anything? Why would that be such a big thread throughout her whole life? So anyway, this ordinary, nearing moronic in my view, person is the head of the diversity, equity, inclusion, and has been radicalized through the Jewish education and Jewish NGO system, and spouts exactly the talking points that the World Economic Forum spouts, and does it verbatim, pretty much word for word. Maybe there's something in that, I'm not sure. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.